I took that deep pause at the end of that last video because I never know if I'm rambling on over the time. But another form of spiritual defense is to not feel compromised because you believe that maybe you've lost your mind 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 times. My philosophy really is that if you don't feel like you've lost your mind, if you don't feel like you've lost control, then you probably don't have any control over your mind. You probably are somebody who is highly programmed. You're highly rigid. You won't allow yourself to have a breakdown so that you can be recreated. So another form of spiritual defense is to accept the fact that maybe you are a little crazy, or maybe you've gone crazy, or maybe you're currently, crazy. Because I just don't know how you remain sane in an insane world. When you look outside of you and you see really what's going on in this world at large, that is highly constructed insanity. So for you to live a life where you say, I'm perfectly together, I've got it all together, I've never really lost it, well, you definitely are several sandwiches short of that picnic that I just spoke about. So that's why the term crazy. You're crazy. I mean, in some ways you can take it personally, or you can take it as a sign of potential liberation, that maybe you are viewed that way. And I'll give you a couple examples. When I was, I think it was 12 or 13 years old, that was when Ronald Reagan was in office. And I had speech class as part of my normal public school education, and I was giving a speech, and did several of them that year, about why it was morally reprehensible that Ronald Reagan wouldn't put any boycotts against South Africa. And I was speaking about the apartheid system and F.W. de Klerk and P.W. Botha and what was happening in that system with the apartheid system. Now, I was doing this in a little tiny all-white town in the middle of Michigan, and I'm 13 years old, so obviously nobody in my speech class had any idea what I was talking about, and neither did my teacher. But it didn't matter to me because I felt passionate about that subject. It didn't matter that it was halfway across the world, and I'd never been to Africa, and I still hadn't been. It didn't matter to me. And so when people were like, she's crazy, or we don't even know what she's talking about, I can appreciate that they were 13 years old, they didn't understand. But when Nelson Mandela was freed many, many years later, if they had any recollection of what I had been speaking about, then they understood that at that point, I knew what I was talking about. Padge, be quiet. Then when I was 15, 16 years old, and it seemed like overnight, all of a sudden I had 20, 25 neo-Nazis in my high school trying to recruit. And I said, this is outrageous, it's ridiculous. I became the lone voice in my high school tracking and following these kids. I put my name on every white power publication that I could get my hands on all across the country. I had filing cabinets of this stuff at home. I mean, we'd have planes flying over our house, and my father would say at dinner, "They're coming to get you. They're coming to get you," because he knew what I was doing. Well, everyone thought I was crazy because, their attitude was, well, we're not racist, we're not going to become a part of this, so how does it matter? Well, it mattered when one of the leaders of those skinhead organizations was the first person to be prosecuted under new hate crime legislation in Michigan for nearly beating a black guy to death outside of a 7-Eleven. That's when everyone in my high school was like, maybe she knows what she's talking about. So if you're going to be out on the fringe, or you're going to be delving into subjects that are just not part of the common man's thought process, then you're going to be called crazy. And in the end, you're going to be validated. But you lose your mind so that you can begin to put it together in the way that you need to, so that you have your own particular form of sanity. No human being can create sanity for another person. They can help them achieve it. They can help them through the process of breakdown, but no human being can determine what sanity is for another person. So that's why you have to be willing as a form of spiritual defense to take control to the extent that you can of crafting and creating the way your mind works, what it's going to react to, and how it's going to see the world. And that has to be outside of the purview of even the people who are closest to you. You're outside the purview of your husband, your wife, your mother, your brother, your sister, your co-workers, anybody. You have to be willing to have that experience where you feel like you're losing your mind and realize it's not all over. It's all going to be put back together in due time, but you're losing it because so much of it is no longer valuable. And there's a whole new world to discover. And so that's why when somebody says you're crazy, as I spoke about in the last video, your form of spiritual defense is to have a higher understanding that these things happen to conscious individuals. It's sometimes the way you become conscious in a crazy world. Okay? So that's another form of spiritual defense. And I would say maybe the highest form of spiritual defense right now. And we can give this gift to each other, and we can also give it to ourselves. The highest form of spiritual defense, and this might be a good thing for us to do for an exercise, is to take out a piece of paper and write down the reasons why you are fundamentally lovable. Why you are fundamentally lovable to yourself. I mean, you should be able to create a comprehensive list that are the reasons why you love yourself. That's the most important list. Write down 7 of them. Let me know what you come up with. And then to write down a list why you are fundamentally lovable in terms of other people. Why they have a fundamental reason to really love and feel admiration for you. And if you can work with that list, if you can come up with it, if you can even just process those thoughts in your mind, then you've created the ultimate form of spiritual defense, which is to realize no matter how anybody comes at you, no matter what they say to you, no matter how much the breakdown feels like it's persisting, you have fundamentally expressible reasons to love yourself and for other people to love you. So see, that's not even like a Mother Mary karate chop. That's like the big, huge, warm, loving embrace that you are putting out towards yourself, which is really what you need. It's really, really at the end of the day what we need is to feel self-love. Okay? Then we need to be able to transform that self-love into a greater love. And so for the people who have been supportive of me on these videos and that I've conversed with before, and people who are going to come along, I just want to let you know that the ultimate message here is, from me at least, is to lose it so you can come together, and is to practice some form of self-love. Because if you are going to live a life where you don't have the fundamental components of self-love, you are going to be a seeker all of your days, and you will never arrive at a destination point. So again, why don't, if you sit down with that list 3 or 4 minutes, why don't you post on this board down at the bottom, the 7 reasons why you're fundamentally lovable. And no hate on these boards, and let's make this about a higher level of love.